you go down to level up, because that's just how we develop software now.
AI stuff.
AI is talking to AIs, billions of lines of code, really. Copilot's, the special child of VS Code. Get off your phone. The UX always wins. I still want to work from home, be the kind of person that people like working with, and you'll be able to accomplish much more than you could on your own.
Hey, coming to you live from the top of the tower at the Planetarium for React Summit. I'm K-Ball from JS Party. I'm one of your hosts. I'm here with Nick Nisi.
Hoi, hoi.
And we are joined by the one, the only, Kent C. Dodds.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me.
Kent, just in case there's one person out in the audience who has not heard of you before, maybe, why don't you introduce yourself? Let people know who you are.
Well, I'm sure that if you don't know who I am, you're not alone. There are a lot of people who don't know who I am. My name is Kent C. Dodds. I am from Utah. I live there with my wife and 5 children. I help developers build quality applications through education. So I teach people full stack web on EpicReact.Dev. I go really deep into React on EpicReact.Dev, and testing JavaScript.com.
Very cool. And you're also the author of very popular libraries and things that I use day to day, things like testing library.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm glad that worked out.
It's really nice.
Yeah, good. I'm glad that's helpful.
You're talking about learning, and we'll go a little bit. We'll try to get out of learning some as well, but like diving into learning, one of the things that's interesting right at this moment in learning, you have all this new AI stuff, and people are using it to learn or to bypass learning or to do things. What are you seeing in terms of trends, in terms of folks learning web dev for the first time, learning new concepts? Is it changing, or is it the same as it ever was?
I think it is changing, and I think that there are new skills that we need to develop as developers. The skill of being able to properly prompt the AI to help generate good code, and then review the code that it generated to make sure that it is in fact good code. When in my teaching, I like record videos and things. I have the AI assistant turned on, and I encourage my students to also have their AI assistants turned on. Not because the hand-holding is helpful or whatever, but because that's just how we develop software now. And you should practice the way that you actually develop. It's important for you to get a whole bunch of code that's generated for you and be like, that's interesting. And like learn that, internalize that process of an automatic review once it's been generated. And then also the ability to debug things when they're not right. Yeah, things are changing at a rapid pace. It's constantly getting better at generating code. But this is a really important skill that all developers need.
Do you see, like, as your students are going through these and you're encouraging them to use AI to assist with that, do you see the kind of questions that you might get as like support changing? Does it get influenced by the AI at all, or does it make it like harder or easier to reason about problems that might arise?
Well, I never got a lot of questions about syntax because I mostly am teaching experienced developers, but simple questions about APIs and things, especially with TypeScript now, all my stuff is in TypeScript. I'm not getting questions about, which argument goes where and stuff like that. But I am still getting questions about why does it work this way? And those are the kinds of questions that I think we are still like important for us to understand why behind things, because that makes us more effective reviewers, also even authors of the code as well. Like sometimes the AI is not going to generate the code that you're looking for, so you still have to author the code. But the understanding of why things work a certain way has always been a question that I get. And so yes, I am getting fewer questions about simpler things. I will occasionally get questions about things that I'm like, I can tell you didn't ask AI, because like AI would have told you an answer to that question right off and it would have been right and everything. And so I think people are still learning to incorporate AI into their like regular process of learning. And I think that's also an important thing. Sometimes, especially when you're learning something new, AI is really good because it can fill in the holes that you didn't know were there. It can like, you don't know what you don't know sort of thing. And now AI can like fill you in on those things. Anyway, long way to answer your question. I'm still getting the important or the really key questions, I think, that we as engineers are more suited to answer. And I'm starting to see fewer of the simpler questions that AI can kind of answer.
One of the things you mentioned there is debugging output. And I feel like debugging has long been the sort of neglected stepchild of software development, where we don't, at least in university, there was not much taught about
Yeah,
how
not
do
at
you
all. No,
debug.
not for me.
I don't know if you teach debugging skills in particular, but it feels like that is rising. So how would you go about helping someone learn to debug?
Yeah, I think the reason that debugging isn't a topic that's taught in college classes or even at like a boot camp or even most courses is because it's the sort of thing that it's difficult to manufacture a scenario. So at least as an educator thinking about, okay, what are the examples? It's just really difficult to come up with the example because once you figure out what the problem is, well, now I know what the problem is. I'll just like fix that, and now I don't have to deal with with the bug. One of the things that I do is teach performance debugging in EpicReact. And so I'm showing you the different tools that we can use in the browser and things to optimize things in that way and figure out where the problem is in the first place. But it is a harder skill to teach, which I think is part of why it doesn't really show up in much curriculum. And it also it seems to be a skill that you have to learn through experience and just trying it. And frankly, it's also something that AI is pretty bad at helping us with. Like you say, what is wrong with this code? It's not really gonna know because like lots of times the bug has to do with some business logic or something too. And so, yeah, that's an interesting skill that I think is still very valuable for engineers to have.
Yeah, I do feel like one like area that AI helps me with on that is like, here's a stack trace that I just got from something that failed, and I would normally have to like cut pieces out of that, like my file name, my specific file name. If I Google for that, it's not going to matter, or it's not going to find anything. But I can just take the whole stack trace and pass it to an AI and say, hey, what's wrong with this? And it can usually like at least help me to decipher, especially with like something that's like a long TypeScript error.
Huge stack trace. Yeah,
Then you'd be like, oh, well, that just means that you didn't have a proper type here or something. You're missing this property.
Yeah, I have found AI to be really helpful in that for that as well. And it kind of goes back to I see this problem a lot with new learners too. They just don't read the error message.
Guilty.
Like, so yeah, also right. Like
Well,
it's
and
pretty.
the first thing I do when I sit down to help somebody who asks for help debugging is, all right, let's go look at the error message. What does it actually say?
Yeah, read the error message. It's like somebody shows you an error message that says cannot call .map on undefined. They say, what does this mean? And you say, well, it looks like you tried to call .map on undefined. So, yeah, and look, there's a line there, and there's where that's at. Yeah, it looks like that variable is probably undefined. And this is why we use TypeScript.
That's where the biggest problems come in, though. Like for me, it's like the most common error message that I get that is just like, what is going on? Is like I'm trying to pass like an object with these properties, and it says, oh, this object with these properties, and it lists them all, does not match this object with these properties, and then it just like trails off and goes N96 more.
Yeah,
or something,
dot. It's like, well, there's something very important in that dot.
Yeah.
Yeah, which might say more about the types that we have in our program. Maybe could be simplified than anything else.
So you mentioned that when in your classes, you're teaching and you're like in your videos, you have the AI on. What does that mean for you? Is it like Copilot? Is it something more in depth, like a cursor?
Yeah. So I started with Copilot. I recorded all of the Epic Web videos with Copilot, all 452 of them. And then I got into use Super Maven for a while. That was really great. Really fast. Basically just like Copilot at the time that I used it, just way faster. There was another one I used for a little bit in there. I forgot what it was called. And then Codium. I got into Codium for a while. And I recorded all of the EpicReact videos, V2 videos with Codium. I like that a lot because I just like their business model better. And the team was good, and the editor was just as, it's just an extension. And then Copilot got better, got some features that Codium couldn't implement because Copilot's, the special child of VS Code. But around that same time, I discovered Cursor. People kept on saying, like, you got to try Cursor. And I was like, could it really be that much better? Yes, it is that much better. It is way, way better. And this is comes back to just one of the most important principles of software development is the UX always wins. It doesn't matter anything else. You could be technically better in 60 million different ways, but if your UX is not better, then you will lose. At least it lost in my own business. So yeah, Cursor just has a really, really great user experience. Codium has come back around, and just in the last couple of weeks, they launched their Windsurf editor. They've also forked VS Code so they can have the APIs they need to build the experience they want. So that's also very interesting. Now I see like these are just kind of competing against each other. We win for that. But yeah, long answer to your question. It was I use Cursor for all of that.
I wonder if VS Code loses because everybody's just forking them now.
Yeah, well,
Does it become like a Blink? I forgot what it was called in Safari.
Yeah. It is. I think that VS Code is always going to be dominant. Even these other editors are probably going to be contributing back to VS Code in some ways. Copilot is also improving and adopting ideas from these other editors as well. So it is like inspiring each other, at least from the outside looking in, that's what it looks like. What I tell people is if you're happy with your AI assistant, probably just stick with it, because if it's not as good as the others, it will get there before long. That said, because they're all VS Code based, it takes like 5 minutes to move all of your plugins and everything to the next one, so it's not really that challenging.
We've talked a lot about learning and AI. Putting those aside, what are you excited about right now in tech?
Oh, I think the thing I'm most excited about is what the Remix team is doing with React Router v7 and taking the majority of React apps in the wild and giving them an incremental migration to modern React. Whereas everything else that we had before was, okay, now rewrite your app so that you can take advantage of all these nice React features. And for most apps, that's irresponsible from a business perspective. And also now, because of what they're doing with React Router v7, it's unnecessary because you can do all of the things if you want to. And you can continue to use React Router the way you always have, but if you want to add server rendering, if you want to add file system routing or not, or if you want to start doing RSCs and server functions, all of that stuff will be soon when React Router v7 is released in the next week or two. That will be available to people. So they just incrementally migrate themselves to v7 and they start opting into these different features. And then because Remix is kind of morphing into React Router v7, they're going to take the Remix brand and make a new framework that's like from scratch. Now we have RSCs and server actions in React. Let's build a new framework that is RSC first. Based on the over decade work that Ryan and Michael have put into React Router, and in the last few years the Remix team has put into Remix, I'm very confident that what they put together for what Remix becomes is going to be the way I like to build software, my favorite. So that's what I'm most excited about right now.
The incremental migration to React, to modern React, does that mean, you mentioned like RSC, so React Router 7 will support that in some ways, so that'll be like an alternative to Next?
Yeah. So, I mean, it currently is, and React Router is the most widely used framework for React.
Yeah.
And the RSC support kind of depends on the bundler, because the RSCs kind of need the bundler to work properly. So React Router, it doesn't require Vite, but if you want to use these features, then you'll use Vite. You could probably make it work with RSPack and all the other cool ones now, but I think they're focused on Vite right now. If you're good to opt into all of that or migrate to it, which is very possible, people are migrating from Webpack to Vite all the time, then you can start opting into these different features. And it's implemented differently from how Next.js implements it, but it is, the full feature set that you're looking for. And I think it's really well implemented. And actually a lot of the confusion that people have had around React Server components over the last year or two, I think are mostly confusion pieces because of Next.js and the way that Next.js implemented it. So I think actually it's going to become a lot easier when people see it with React Router.
Yeah, I agree. And I think just having two implementations, you can see the commonalities and then what are the borders where it's Next and Remix.
And this is why in Epic React, my React Server Component workshop, we are building a framework from scratch based on React Server Components. And that's in part because I didn't want to use Next.js. But even if Remix had support for RSCs already, I would still do it this way because I think there's a lot of value to understand where are the lines between these abstractions? What is the RSC part and what is the bundler and what is the compiler and what is the framework? And so the RSC workshop is the one workshop that doesn't use TypeScript in Epic React v2. It doesn't even use JSX. It doesn't use a compiler. It's just Node and the browser, and that's it. And how they run natively. So I think there's a lot of value in doing that, even though it's not the way you'd actually write your application, because it helps you get a sense for the landscape and what is responsible for what.
I love that. Like when I was learning React, I wrote my own virtual DOM because I wanted to understand how it works. Not because I would ever use it in production.
Of course you don't want to.
Yeah.
Well, maybe. I don't know. Could be the next one. But yeah. Yeah, I think it's really valuable. And when I'm teaching React in Epic React, the first workshop, the first lesson actually doesn't even use React. We're just creating DOM nodes. And then the next lesson, we create elements and render those, but we don't use JSX yet. And then we introduce JSX. And so, and also when I teach testing library, we implement our own render function first, and then we bring in testing library. When I teach testing from the very beginning, we don't use a framework. We use Node and just run a script, and we build our own mini testing framework, and then we swap it out for a real one. Another example, when I'm teaching the use hook in React 19, we build our own version of the use hook, and then we swap it out for the real one. So anytime I can, I try to say, okay, we're going to build a naive version of this. It's not going to cover all the edge cases, and that's fine. But now you have an understanding that it's not magic, it's just code, and it's actually simpler than you think.
I think that is a hugely valuable way to teach and something that a lot of the sort of boot camp style things fail on because they come the other way in. I'm curious, so you mentioned a number of things that you have done that for. Are there other technologies you see out in the ecosystem where you're like, hey, people are treating this like it's magic. You should go and just build a naive version?
Yeah, there are especially some things that really do feel like magic. I'm thinking about like the Svelte compiler and how that works. If I were to start learning that, I would want to build a naive version of that, or at least maybe I don't want to build the compiler itself, but I want to use the building blocks that they use to build the compiler to come up with something, or at least look at what the compiled code looks like and how my changes impact that. I'm guessing they've actually got a tool for this. I would be surprised if they didn't. But that would be the way that I would want to learn Svelte. I think probably the same thing with Vue and others. I think that there's just a lot of value in understanding how. In fact, this is one of my programming principles. I'm working on the Epic programming principles, and one of them is you go down to level up. So if every one of us, as we're shipping product, we do want to deliver value. We might get to a place where things are working, we don't quite understand why, we think we understand, and things don't always work like we thought we understood it, and then it didn't work, and so you play around, and then it works, and then you move on to the next task, and you just have a bunch of holes you don't even know are there. And so if you're tired of doing that, and you're ready to just take some time to really understand it, you go down the level of abstraction, you understand how the abstraction works, you build your own version or whatever, and that is what levels you up. And so yeah, whatever tool people are using, I think they should, when they're ready to actually understand and become more efficient, they should go down to level up.
Yeah, I like that. And diving into compilers is a really interesting one for a number of reasons, right? They're becoming much more a part of the front-end ecosystem. You have Svelte, but you also have things like Quick, React compiler, all these different pieces. But yeah, some of those fundamental abstractions around transforming code with code will carry you all over.
Yeah, I know, like ASTExplorer.net is just an amazing resource because especially when ES6 came out and there were a lot of new syntax features and things, and as we get new syntax over time, it's really nice to be able to take some code that you don't recognize, paste it in there, and now you have a name for what that thing is. Oh, that's an identifier, or oh, that's a member expression, or whatever, and now or an import specifier. Now I can Google that. Of course, now we have ChatGPT, and you just ask it, what is this? And if it was trained recently, then maybe it'll know. Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in seeing the data behind the code. Yeah.
Have you written any code mods?
I did, yeah. JS Code Shift, JS Code Shift, that's what it's called. I never connected with that one.
Same.
It was a very complicated tool. It was supposed to be like jQuery for code. I tried it 3 times, never got it. And so I helped to kickstart the Babel code mod project.
Okay.
And that allowed you to write a code mod as a Babel plugin. And I much prefer the visitor pattern that the Babel plugins work with. So I actually do have a course on Frontend Masters that I released for, it was an AST workshop. So ESLint plugin, writing a custom ESLint plugin, writing a custom Babel plugin, and a code mod as a part of that.
Nice.
Yeah, it was fun. Code mods were really helpful when I deprecated my CSS and JS library called Glamorous in favor of Emotion. Tejas Kumar wrote a code mod to help people migrate, and yeah, they're really, really nice.
Well, and I feel like there's a rising trend of doing that, or doing the types of things you're talking about with React Router 7 of like, okay, let's acknowledge that most of us are working in legacy applications. And if we want to get people to the cutting edge, we need to provide migration paths, whether that's code mods or flags or what have you.
Yeah, yep, 100%. And the React Router team, Remix team has done a really good job of that in particular, the feature flags and code mods to help the, they're only on version 2 in Remix. And going from version 2 of Remix to version 7 of React Router will just be another code mod. And they've got a bunch of feature flags for like even bug fixes that change semantics and behavior and stuff. You turn on that feature flag and now it probably doesn't affect you, but like maybe it does. And so you have a quick and easy way to turn it off. And it drastically complicates things for their team because now they have like split it, different code paths they have to follow and lots of duplicate code and things. But like that effort is worth it for the number of people who depend on their code. So this is another thing that I just really appreciate about the React team is how much thought they put into making sure that the hundreds of millions of lines of code that are out there for React, honestly, it's probably billions of lines of code really, how much of that exists and how much they care to allow it to continue to exist.
So we're on the topic of React. We are here at React Summit. What keeps you coming out to conferences like this?
Oh, dude, so there are so many reasons. I miss my family terribly, so I'm actually like, the more I travel, the less I enjoy it just because I want to be with my family. But it is so great to be in person with people. At a time when, if you're looking for a job, you submit your resume to the company and you're competing against hundreds and thousands of people who are submitting AI-generated resumes. You have no hope at all. And then on the other end of that, you're a hiring person and you're seeing thousands of resumes. Some of them are real and some of them aren't, generated by AI. And it's basically impossible to tell the difference. Sometimes it's pretty obvious, but it's very difficult. I just talked to a sponsor who actually had one person who submitted to the application twice with 2 different resumes, different names and everything. And they got accepted, both of them. And so they come to the first one and they knew like in the first couple minutes, this guy's just typing in ChatGPT and waiting for the response to answer all my questions. And so he shut it down. And then like a couple days later, he has the next person on it. You're the same person. I already shut you down. And so how do we solve this problem? This is how we solve this problem. You see the person in person and you develop a relationship of some kind. That is how we avoid these problems. Every job I've had was not a resume I submitted. in professional since I became a professional. And I think that the challenges, and on top of that, the people who are hiring are using AI tools to filter the resumes as well. And so it's just AIs talking to AIs. If you want any hope at getting a job that you like, and that you're just not sending hundreds of resumes to all these different places, you just have to go and make a human connection. There are good ways to do that. You can just walk into the office, 100%, just go walk into the office. And I'm a person, I'm here, I want to talk to somebody about possible employment. They might tell you, just send me an email. But look at that. When you send the email, they
remember you.
Put a picture of yourself. I came in, and they'll remember you. Like, human connection, that matters. So you could do that. There's also meetups. And there's conferences. In my business, I'm not looking for a job. I'm happy as an educator, and I don't think that I'll ever be employed by somebody else again. That can change, but I don't expect that to. But even for me, I think that there's a lot to be said for the human connection as an educator, and like people saying that I'm not just a talking head, but I'm actually a human who knows my students, cares about their education and the knowledge that they're acquiring. That human connection is huge. And that's why I run my own conference. I also have a camp event that I run, because I just think it's that critical to get people together. And really cool things can happen when you get smart professionals together.
Most of the jobs that you're going to get are going to be from connections, from your network, or the best jobs that you're going to get could be from that. And I still have connections from the first conferences that I went to, and I just talk to them all the time online, see them at other conferences as we go, and like rejuvenate those connections.
Yeah, and the cool thing about that too, you might have known those people online before, but meeting them in person deepens that relationship much further than it ever could have been. Yeah. So like now when you're reading their posts, you are reading it in their voice, like you have such a better sense. And even people that you don't like that much, you don't jive with them very well, whatever. Once you've met them in person, you might still not like them very much, and that's fine, but even that relationship is better.
Yeah.
Like you can understand them better, they understand you better. Like it humanizes the whole experience. So I wish that I could help everybody understand how valuable being in person is. And I understand not everybody can travel across the world to go to, but you don't have to travel across the world. You can start a meetup in your local area. Yep. It's a lot of work, it is, but like everything that is worth anything is a lot of work. I just value that human connection so much. Now, I still want to work from home. I don't want to go into an office or anything like that. But just having those regular connections once a quarter or so really, really is valuable.
Any tips on making those connections when you're at the conference?
Yeah, like get off your phone, unless you're taking a selfie with somebody or something and then posting it. But yeah, you've got, I sometimes will see sponsors where the employee is sitting on their phone at the booth, just waiting for somebody to come to them. Yep. And that doesn't make any sense to me at all, because you're literally paying a bunch of money to be here. Maybe their boss doesn't know what they're doing, probably. And then they go to their boss and they say, oh yeah, that was like worthless because nobody came and talked to me. What the heck? What is your job here? Go and talk to people. Don't be afraid. Most of the speakers that you're interested in talking with are excited to talk with you. Don't be afraid to go up and talk to speakers. And if they are bothered by you coming to talk to them, then, well, that happens sometimes, I guess. They're mean. Don't talk to them again. Just talk to somebody else. But I think you just have to break out of your shell a little bit. And if the conference does its job, then they're going to have extended breaks and a long lunch and activities and things that kind of break the ice for you. But that doesn't always work that way. Like a meetup is just like people just show up. So you got to put the work in to make those human connections. And it can be harder for some people. I'm more extroverted, so it's a little easier for me. I do get tired and everything, but it doesn't come super easily for people. But yeah, life is hard and you can do it.
and conferences really are an easy way to do that. Like it's an easy track. Like this morning on the way here, we were in the shuttle coming to React Summit. And I just, it was a silent shuttle. And I just said, hey, y'all like React?
I love it when I get into an elevator and everybody's quiet and I say, now I bet you all wonder why I brought you here. It gets a chuckle out of it.
We all feel awkward in
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
right? And then somebody's Nick Nisi and breaks it with an awkward question, and now the ice is broken, and we're all
And
talking.
now we can talk.
And so
Yeah.
you too can be Nick Nisi.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting close to the end of our time here. Is there anything you would like to leave folks with to make sure that they know coming away from this?
Here's the interesting thing. Being a good, kind person is the selfish thing to do, but it's also the selfless thing to do, because it's both. If you want to have happiness and satisfaction and joy in life, then you're going to be a nice person. That's the best way to do that. You're going to develop good, positive relationships inside the ecosystem and outside. And you're going to take care of those really important relationships in your life. I'm married and have 5 children. It's the top relationship that I have in my life is with them. And then my relationships with the different partners that I have matters a lot. And I've found that my relationships with all of those people make my success more full. And I feel like if I were successful without those relationships, it would be empty. Be a kind person. It's the selfish thing to do. If you only care about yourself, you will care about others. Because otherwise, if you really just care about yourself and don't think about other people, then you are not going to be as happy or even fulfill your potential. There's like the biggest and most amazing things are accomplished by people working together. There's not a single building here in New York City that was built by one person. And so being able to work with other people is really important. Be a kind person, be the kind of person that people like working with, and you'll be able to accomplish much more than you could on your own.
It's very well said.
I cut there. Like that. Stop with that. That's great.
Thank you.